Starting things off for the single raise spot, we're going to start looking at our 22% size flops. Those are only the monotones, and it's all of them. So ransom seems for us to look through it together. Starting off on these type of boards, I think that will hold true is how wide everything will be mixing. One is because we are going to be a bit protection bet oriented, and also how small we are betting on flops. So you will see almost everything will mix on these type of boards, but you still see some patterns of which hands are going to be betting at a high frequency. So if we start off with our strongest holdings or flushes, you will see that they are all betting at a fairly high frequency, decently higher than the board frequency, ranging from 70% up to 90%, depending what type of flush it is. And then you can see our sets are pure betting the flop. But for example, our two pairs, you will have to start mixing in some checks. Again, these boards, the EV tends to run a bit closer between out of position in position, and obviously it's a quite dynamic board, so something like a two pair you need to sometimes pot control. So for example, the two pairs too, you will see a fairly even mix. They do gradually increase the stronger kicker you get, but even some of your weakest ones will still get in there for roughly around the flop frequency. And then you will see a wider mix of sort of the more protection bets, like your second pairs, all mixing in there, though at a low frequency than the board. Your bottom pairs, also a bit lower frequency than the board. And then you will see some pure checks. You will see, for example, your under pairs with no backdoor flush draw are gonna be checking. But in general, for the bluffing regions, you will see wide mix of even some very poor equity hands, like you will even bet something like a 9-2 suited. Even really poor equity hands like a 7-2 suited will occasionally get in there. So these boards in general, almost every hand will get in there at some frequency. And then for turns, we're going to be mainly using a smaller size in the 67 to 50% region. Me and Doug personally use 58% on turns. And you can see that we are betting a fair amount of 2-street hands for protection, because these boards will operate a bit more in the protection side compared to other boards where we're going to be betting bigger, and on turns we're going to be mainly betting hands that are going to look to triple barrel river. And then for example on rivers, you are mainly going to be utilizing overbets. So for a while I only used a pot size on this type of rivers, but now I tend to use a 125 to 150% pot. And occasionally I have a smaller size. There are certain hands in your range that really want to bet smaller, but they tend to be very low frequencies, so it's going to be a bit challenging to balance that part of your range. Like for example here, main hands are going to be interested in betting smaller are your weaker two pairs, and that's basically it. So you can see the smaller size only getting in there 10% of the time total. So yeah, in general rivers you are mainly going to be interested in overbetting, and it's going to be your stronger two pairs or better, and then the appropriate bluffs for that are mainly going to be oriented on having a flush blocker and poor showdown. So we can take a look at some other flops where the frequency will increase. There are generally going to be the lower monotone boards. So on these type of boards you can see your frequency will start increasing quite a bit compared to the higher ones. This is also a function of these boards being a bit better for our range, and also since the board the top pair is lower, we have a wider range of vulnerable value bets like our top pairs or something like pocket tens. So that's a function in a way where we have to increase our flop frequency quite a bit, but you will see similar things of, your flush is going to be betting a higher frequency, your sets, of course, going to be mainly pure betting, your two pairs, you're still going to be mixing in a healthy amount of checks with most of your two pairs on these type of boards, regardless if it's a higher frequency board or not. And turns are going to be operating mainly similar. If you would to split two sizes, you would start using a bit more overbets on these type of boards, but I personally use single size on turn and same for dog, so I would mainly stick again to the 58% sizing or 67% sizing on turns. But you do see a bit more overbetting happening on turns here. And then rivers again are going to be operating very similar, but you're going to have a bit more weaker value bets on these type of boards than the ace high ones, where, for example, here on a River King, we're going to have River King X and our overpairs to the board. They're going to be interested in betting a bit smaller. But for example, if we get a more of a blank, you're going to see the overbet again heavily preferred. So if we just take a look at some other ones, let's take a look at a straight flush one. Again, because this is a lower board, we're going to be increasing our flop frequency. And especially since it's a 4-high one, you have a lot more vulnerable top pairs, way more over pairs. So again, your frequency on the flop is going to increase quite a bit. And for example, if you look at a king high one, you will see the frequency start dropping a bit, but not as much as ace high one. So it sort of gradually shifts down with the high card is and also with the middle cards. So in general, when the middle or bottom card is a bit higher, also you will be decreasing your flop frequency. Because you see now, with the lower side cards, your frequency increases. Again, take a look at that 9-7 again. Yeah, you see in general, the higher frequency ones are going to be the lower boards. And if the middle and bottom card are lower as well, you will be increasing your flop frequency. But in general, what holds true for one board will hold true for the other in terms of you're going to be mixing a wide part of your range. Most things will get in there for a mix. Your stronger hand's going to be betting at a higher frequency than the board. You can always be mixing in your two pairs for some checks on flop, and turns are going to mainly play the same, or you're going to be playing under pot size, and you're going to have a bit more two-street value bets on turns than on other boards where we're going to utilize a bigger sizing and play a more polar turn range. But also I think I want to quickly go through is the 4 flush turns. So these boards you can pick between two strategies. You can either play still a low frequency but a bit higher frequency of block, or you're going to be playing overbet only in a very polar range where you're only betting your second and nut flushes and have a very low frequency of bluffs. I've gone back and forth with the strategy I choose because it's both using overbet only here or a block only will generate very similar EV. And at the moment I've been mainly utilizing overbet only, where I'm only overbetting second nut and nut flushes and a very low frequency mix of bluffs. And then again on river I'm going to be mainly betting a big size, a pot plus sizing, and only value bet my nut flushes on rivers. So yeah, that's a bit how the monotones work. I'm going to be moving on to the 30% boards now.